Good morning. Today is Monday, February 25th, 2019, and my name is Michael Conley, and I'm the Director of Finance and Operations. And today I thought I would spend a few minutes going over the school department fiscal 2020 preliminary budget. We have put together a preliminary budget document, and we have posted that budget to the district website, and we plan to present at the school committee meeting on March 4th, which is Monday evening at 6:30 in the Distance Learning Center. But I thought I'd go over a few slides today, about a handful of slides that just talks about some of the highlights of that budget. As it has been the case in the past, we are looking at several budget challenges, um, starting with state aid, again, being relatively flat. So we are not a community or a school district that stands to benefit significantly from increases in Chapter 70 aid or unrestricted, local government aid. Those increases to North Reading were minimal, around $100,000 heading into fiscal year 2020. Our local revenue obviously is constrained or limited within Proposition 2.5, and our local receipts and other sources of revenue locally are constrained or limited. Like many other municipality school districts, we experience an increase in our fixed costs on an ongoing basis, mainly health insurance and county retirement and workers' compensation and general liability insurance, and are all areas that certainly go up in most cases by a greater percentage than Proposition 2.5 or our revenue. So there's a quick chart over the last 5 or 6 years. And when you look at our fixed cost percentage increases, those costs of health insurance and benefits and county retirement and general liability and workers' compensation and payroll taxes and a variety of sources that make up our fixed costs tend to go up almost double, in most cases double, than that of our revenue from year to year. So this is a pretty telling chart, which sort of prevents kind of the structural problem or structural challenge with funding both municipal and school budgets. If you our school revenue offsets, which also help bring in revenue and are also a part of our budget, although they may not be part of our general budget appropriation with the town. They're also line items and revenue that we rely on to make everything work. Those are our state and federal grants, our revolving accounts, the state circuit breaker program, which helps reimburse us for our special education out of district costs. That revenue is fairly limited as well. And if you look at our chart over the last 10 years or so of our school revenue offsets, this is our grants and our revolving accounts, you can see that that's been relatively stable. We haven't seen the ability to have significant increases here. Back in 2011 and 2012, we had pretty steady or an increase in that revenue due to the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act in the Obama administration, which increased federal grant opportunities for districts during the recession years. They then kind of spoke of this recession, cliff, falling off the cliff type, image, and that we experienced that to a little bit in 2013 with the drop of our school revenue offsets. We then used a lot of our revolving accounts and funds that we had built up in our reserve through our revolving accounts in fiscal year 2014 to make that budget year work. We had less than a 2% budget increase that year with the town. Then it kind of leveled off in fiscal year 15 and 16. In 17, we increased user fees in the athletic and the transportation for the first time in several years, which brought in some additional revenue. And then really over these last few years, we have received an increase in circuit breaker revenue, which is that amount that reimburses school districts for their special education out of district costs when you're above a certain threshold. Between 70 and 75% of any costs that are above that threshold, which is generally about $40,000 to to 44,000 per student that is eligible for that program. But because of our costs have been rising, our district costs, also our circuit breaker revenue has been rising. So that's a lot of that increase in revenue offsets as a result of that program, state funded program. And then you have full day kindergarten, and interest of families desiring full day kindergarten has increased in recent years. And we still charge a tuition for full day kindergarten. So that has raised that minimum tuition coming in as well. So that's really the majority of why we're seeing an increase these last couple of years to what it's been. But we're about 2.9 million or so of additional revenue that we bring in above the general fund appropriation with the town through revolving accounts we charge tuition or user fees for, as well as our state and federal grants. Some of the other challenges that we face, certainly our contractual obligations with our employees. So it's not uncommon to see about 82.7% of our budget is made up of salaries and our fixed salary obligations, and those increases to meet our employee contracts with collective bargaining agreements. So these certainly present an ongoing challenge each year when funding a school department budget. When you look at the funding sources of a school budget and really of a municipal budget, these are the areas. You have your local taxes make up about 71% of the revenue. That's pretty typical in a community such as North Reading. Local receipts, items such as the trash fee and a variety of licenses, permitting fees make up about 9.6% that the town brings in. State aid, mainly being the government unrestricted local government aid and Chapter 70 being the major sources of revenue, make up about 13%. And then on the school department side, our revolving accounts and our federal and state grants make up about 6%. So this makeup in this pie chart has been pretty consistent over the last couple of years. You might see, state local taxes staying about 71%. The state aid and the local receipts are starting to maybe decline a little bit. I want to say it was like 13.2 or 9.8 last year, and you might see fees and grants going up slightly when we look at fiscal year 2020. So you definitely seeing a little bit of a shift of a more reliance on other revenue sources through grants and revolving accounts to help fund the school department budget. We look at what our major budget drivers are every year, and these four drivers have been very consistent on an ongoing basis. We have our contractual salary obligations. Those salaries make up 82.7% of our budget. We have about 395 both full and part-time staff members, many of which are part of a collective bargaining agreement with fixed cost of living adjustments and so forth that we need to fund. So it's not uncommon that about 2.5% or somewhere between 2 and 2.5% of our increase each year is really the result of our contractual salary obligations, and that is pretty a common statistic and situation with school department budget. The other major driver, year 4 of what is known as our NRPS 2021, which is our strategic plan. So the district hopes to fund several positions cited in NRPS 2021 to move the educational program forward, to help maintain educationally sound class sizes, to help advance programs in the areas of foreign language, STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, in STEAM at the secondary level is what the focus is in fiscal 2020, and then funding support positions and maintaining appropriate class sizes at the elementary level is certainly a goal and priority of NRPS 2021, the district strategic plan. So that is always a big driver of the budget, and that's certainly a focus in fiscal 2020. The operational costs, maintaining our buildings, our 5 schools and our 4 campuses, funding our transportation program, funding utilities. Certainly that's always a part and a driver of the budget. These costs generally don't get less expensive from year to year. There's certainly cost of living adjustments and certainly increases through inflation and a variety of factors that we need to certainly address and deal with operationally. So that's a big driver of the budget. And then what has been a part of the story, certainly in recent years in North Reading, is unlike many other school districts, is funding special education out of district costs. Students that to order to appropriately meet their needs and certainly their services get educated outside of the district and are housed in a variety of placements, in some day or residential placements. So we're certainly seeing a rise in our special education out of district costs. That is the case again in fiscal 2020. Despite the fact that our total number of students in relation to our population of students placed in out of district special ed placements is actually on the decline. We're just seeing a more of intensive needs in order to meet the service requirements of many students with maybe more severe needs are being placed in residential placements and more costly placements. It's certainly been a driver over the last few years, and certainly continues to be the case in fiscal year 2020. If you look at this chart, these are getting into the numbers. The fiscal 2020 budget in these 5 major budget categories would be a budget a little over $32 million, a little over a $1.3 million increase is what we are asking for, which would be a 4.3% increase over the fiscal year 2019 budget. If you look at the salaries, we're asking for a little less than $1 million increase in our salaries to fund the positions and meet our contractual salary obligations. That would be an increase of 3.7% over last year. And the big factor there is a combination of our meeting our contractual obligations, which would be about 2.5%, and then meeting enrollment-driven increases, particularly around the full-day kindergarten program, as well as funding both needs operationally in the building and grounds maintenance department, as well as meeting some needs through our NRPS 2021 educationally with some new positions to advance educational programs in the areas I spoke of earlier: foreign language, STEM, STEAM, the science, technology, engineering, curricular areas. Instructional expenses, these are areas that have fund both the operating budgets of our schools and departments, instructional technology, materials, textbooks, general supplies, professional development in certain cases has been relatively flat. The area that we have seen going up is our operations and maintenance, and that's the funds needed for facility maintenance, for our buildings. Utilities is in this area as well, and that has been on the rise. Transportation, both special education and regular transportation, big amount of this line item is offset through grants and revolving accounts. But that is on the decline, mainly because these two line items somewhat go hand in hand, transportation and tuitions. And in some cases, the tuition budget, the out-of-district tuition budget, is on the significant increase, and that is mainly due to students moving from, in some cases, day placements to residential overnight placements. And when that is the case, the district isn't responsible for transporting these students on a daily basis. So the transportation line items sometimes go down, but then the tuition costs certainly go up. And I think that's sort of the dynamic that's at play here between these two line items. But overall, this is what we're looking at in terms of the numbers, about a $1.3 million increase over fiscal 2019. driven by those four main budget drivers, which you can see certainly at play here. Breaking down the pie chart in these 5 categories and from a percentage basis, again, not uncommon to see salaries representing over 82% of our total budget requests. Tuitions at that 6.8% request was certainly a large line item, followed by operations and maintenance, our buildings, our facilities, our utilities representing about 5.9%, and then instructional right there at about 3.4%. So these percentage breakdowns have been relatively consistent for a number of years. When you look at our funding, the total budget, again, from a general fund, the amount we're asking the community for or recommending is that $32,083,320 budget, 4.3% increase over fiscal year 2019. As you saw earlier, our grants, state and federal, and our revolving accounts make up a little more than $2.9 million. So our total school funds is actually more like $34,988,820. So a little bit under $35 million when you look at our total school funds, what makes everything kind of work. And then it doesn't fully tell the full picture, because if you look at the second table, the school committee does accept a variety of donations. The annual average is about $250,000, which help fund extracurricular programs, athletic programs, technology, equipment, certainly a variety of additional donations flow in on an ongoing basis to the school department. And then the PTO, their in-kind gifts and budgets, the 5 PTOs, their annual average is about $75,000, which help fund classroom supplies, enrichment activities, school field trips, and a variety of technology equipment, and a variety of other items that make everything work. When we look at our operating budget history, you can sort of our 10-year annual average is about 3.7%. If you look at the last few years, we've been right at just about 3.8% that we've received from the community, which we're certainly very much appreciative. That's helped us maintain level services. We refer to it as sort of modified level services, because we're certainly meeting our level services needs, and then adding maybe a position or two a year to help fund our strategic plan and move the district forward. Our ask at the moment is a little bit more than what we've gotten over the last few years, at about 4.3%, not considerably more, but we are asking the community for 4.3%, which we recognize will be certainly a challenge in this fiscal year, given the financial challenges and the constraints, both state and local revenue that I referenced earlier in the presentation. So what can we conclude from the FY20 budget? What does it accomplish? It certainly includes funds to meet our contractual obligations with employees and employee unions. It includes additional staffing that would achieve educationally sound student and teacher ratios, full-day kindergarten for all families desiring such, advances the academic program at the secondary level with an emphasis on expanding opportunities in foreign language, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, addresses the operational needs of all the 5 schools in terms of maximizing our cleaning, our maintenance, and our energy consumption efficiencies. And it seeks to meet the needs of all students, in particular the district's high needs student population. And certainly includes the operational cost to properly maintain all 5 schools and surrounding campuses. So where do we go from here? We're going to have ongoing discussions with the finance planning team, town administrator, town finance director, finance committee, select board. We don't currently know what the gap is between what we're asking for and what the town is able to afford, although we do know that there is a gap, but it's very fluid right now. We're still working on that with members of the finance planning team. We expect to have that momentarily. The school committee has a budget workshop on April 3rd at 3:30 p.m. There's a budget webinar. There'll be an invite going out shortly for that on March 28th, kind of a lunchtime hour. There's a public hearing on April 9th in the Distance Learning Lab at 6:30 at the middle school, high school campus. Potential additional school committee budget workshop number 2 on April 24th. The school committee is set to vote their budget on April 29th, and we are set to present a budget to the Finance Committee on May 1st. We expect town meeting will occur on Monday, June 10th, and we'll continue to await state budget actions, and there'll be ongoing discussion really over the next several weeks leading up to the budget vote on April 29th with members of the community, staff, public, administration, school committee, select board, finance committee, to try to make everything work. So there are certainly challenges that lie ahead, but we remain hopeful that we can continue to collaborate with members of the town and the finance planning team to fund and achieve a balanced school department budget for fiscal year 2020. So we've just been a little over 20 minutes. That will conclude my FY20 school department preliminary budget update. I hope you found this information informative. Thank you.